Hi guys, today I'm going to make a little video tutorial showing you how to write a CER. I'm going to use this lab that we completed last week where I cooked the menthol. I'm going to write a CER to answer this question on page 21 in your book. Can menthol exist in more than one form? Use observations from this activity as evidence to support your response. So remember, a CER isn't really a thing, it's just a good way to write. And it's the way I want you to write in this class. C stands for claim, where you make a claim that answers the question. E stands for evidence, where I'm going to use observations, which is actually what I saw in the lab that showed me that menthol can exist in more than one form. And reasoning is the science that usually comes from a scientific principle, and it's actually going to come from the scientific principle that we just wrote together, and I'm going to add that to my writing. So first I want you to watch this video, and then once you've watched the video, you have an assignment in Google Classroom where you're going to answer a very similar question about water related to the lab that you did on Monday and Tuesday. So just to remind you about the menthol lab, here is what it looked like. I'm going to let this video play while I kind of talk about it. So I had the hot plate, and over here is the menthol. And if you remember, I passed the menthol around in little vials, and you guys looked at the vials. You were able to shake the vials. Here you can see when he drops the menthol on the foil, it's in clear crystals, and you can clearly see the crystals drop into the flask. Then when the flask was put on the hot plate and I put the watch glass and the ice on the top, as it heated, you'll notice right away that it starts to melt and turns into a clear liquid. And then finally, after it's melting, and I can even start to see that inside this flask, I don't know how your video quality is, but I'm starting to see some steam form on the sides of the flask. And then when I removed the watch glass from the top of the flask, there were little solid menthol crystals that kind of looked like snow on the top of the flask. I also noticed a really minty smell in the air that told me that the menthol had turned into a gas, because I know it had a minty odor. So those are the observations that I made as a result of this lab, and I'm going to go back to this question. Can menthol exist in more than one form? And this is the question I'm going to be answering. Now, when you guys answer, this is the first time that you're going to type your answer in Google Classroom. So you'll have access to a document that looks like this, and your question will be up at the top of the page, and you're going to type your answer. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look, remember I always type my claim in red, and I use the question to write my claim. So I'm going to look at that question, can menthol exist in more than one form? And I'm going to rewrite this question as a statement using only the words from the question. So what I'm actually going to write is menthol can exist in more than one form. And then I'm going to switch over to my evidence. And my evidence is the things I actually saw that tell me that menthol exists in more than one form. So I'm actually going to say, and remember I usually write my evidence in blue. I'm going to get rid of the colors later, but just so you can kind of see how it looks. At first I'm going to say, at first, and those colors are all messed up. Let me fix that. No highlighting. And I want my text to be blue. Okay, so at first the menthol was clear crystals, but after it was heated, it melted to a clear liquid. And this is what I actually saw. I'm just describing what I saw. Finally, the menthol turned into a minty smelling gas and made a fog and steam inside the flask. So that's what I saw. And those are the three ways that I saw the menthol kind of existing. I saw it as clear crystals, I saw it as a clear liquid, and I saw it as a minty smelling gas and fog and steam inside the flask. So those are the forms that I saw it in. Now we talked about at the beginning of class, our scientific principle for this is that matter does exist in three forms. It's solid, liquid, and gas. And menthol is matter, so it exists as a solid and liquid and gas. So that's exactly what I'm going to say here. I'm going to wrap it up by including the science. So menthol is matter, and matter can exist as a solid, a liquid, or a gas. And I think I'm done. So I've got my claim. Menthol can exist in more than one form, clearly answers all parts of the question. My evidence, those are the things that I saw in the lab of the menthol being three different forms, crystals, liquid, and a minty smelling gas. And then finally I wrap it up with the science by saying that menthol is matter and matter can exist as a solid, liquid, or gas. This is a scientific principle we wrote together at the beginning of class. So you can totally use that in your writing. All right, so now what I'm going to do, the last thing I'm going to do, I like the color coding. It helps me be sure I included everything in my writing, but this writing is formal, so I've got to get rid of the colors. So no highlighting, no colors. This is a formal piece of writing. I also really like it when you space out your writing from the question so I can very clearly see that this is what you wrote, not what I wrote. If you want, you can even delete the question and just include your writing, but I wouldn't do that until after you're sure your answer is complete. And I noticed really quickly I need to check my grammar before I submit, and I'm feeling like this looks pretty good. I'm feeling pretty confident. So when you're ready, you can click the Turn In button on the right-hand side of your Google Classroom that you'll see when you work on your lab. So to find your lab and what you're going to write, you're going to go to Classwork in Google Classroom, scroll all the way down to the bottom to IC1. That's where you find the work for this unit. Your work is right here, Lab 3.2 CER. You're going to click on it. You're going to open the Google Doc, and you will get your own copy with your own name. And here's what it looks like. And you'll notice it looks really familiar, but instead of talking about menthol from this lab where I cooked the menthol, you are going to be talking about water from the lab that you completed on Monday and Tuesday. Now, if you want to look back to your observations, that lab is found on pages 27 and 28 of your book. So you have that information to support you in answering this question. But remember, when you write your answer, you should be writing a CER complete with a claim, evidence from what you saw, and reasoning related to a scientific principle that ties the two together. All right, good luck, guys. You're going to do a wonderful job. Have fun.